Relations between Washington and Tehran continue to make headlines, with the United States saying pressure from the Trump administration is weakening the Iranian regime. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo writing an opinion piece in USA Today that there are two main objectives. Firstly, to deprive the Iranian regime of the money it needs to support its destabilizing activities, and secondly, to force the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei to the negotiating table. He says they want a comprehensive deal tackling Iran's nuclear program, ballistic missile development, support for terrorist groups, and Iran's treatment and illegal detention of American citizens. Now, on Monday, President Hassan Rouhani warning that any war against Iran would be the mother of all wars. Meanwhile, Iran has unveiled 3 new precision-guided missiles amid tensions between Iran and the US and European countries in the Strait of Hormuz. The air-to-air missiles revealed by Tehran were developed by the Iranian Defense Ministry and Iran Electronics Industries. Well, for more on these stories, we're joined in studio by our senior international affairs correspondent, Owen Alterman. Owen, is American pressure on Iran that we're hearing from the US Secretary of State likely to make a real impact?
Well, it depends on what the goal is. And as you mentioned in that op-ed, which came out overnight here in Israel, in the evening in the US, Mike Pompeo lays out 2 very different goals. On the one hand, to bring Iran back to the negotiating table for a new and improved, from the American perspective, nuclear deal. And on the other hand, denying Iran the money that Iran would want or need for its own army and for its proxies. On the first goal of bringing Iran back to the negotiating table, it hasn't worked yet, but that's not to say it won't work over the medium term or over the long term. On the second goal of denying Iran the money for its military and its proxies, sure, it's worked. And Mike Pompeo lays out those numbers in the op-ed. We've seen the impact on the Iranian economy from the early May decision by the Trump administration to stop giving waivers to countries that are buying Iranian oil, and just how much Iran's oil exports have absolutely plummeted. But in terms of bringing Iran back to the negotiating table, it's a more difficult play. We should say, Benita, that at a certain level, these 2 goals are at odds with each other. Why? Well, if you want to get Iran to the negotiating table and to get to an actual new deal, then you're going to have to lift the sanctions on Iran, and they're going to get the money. And if you want to deny Iran the money, then over the long term, if you want to deny the money over the long term, then Iran is not going to sign up to a deal. So it's going to be hard in the long term to achieve both of these, but at least at the moment, the administration can say that both of these are their goals and that they're trying to achieve them both.
And all the while, Iran is unveiling 3 new precision-guided missiles. Talk to us through this message while this talk about talk continues.
Well, Iran wants leverage. That's a huge part of Iran's strategy over the past few months. It wants to show the United States and American allies that it can really bring them harm, and it can really do harm to them, whether that be in the Strait of Hormuz with the shipping that we've seen and the seizing of the oil tankers, whether it be by these military threats and these testing of these missiles that they've done, or even by their rhetoric. Iran wants to show that it has a hand to play and that the United States is not going to achieve either of its objectives, or at least it won't achieve those objectives without heavy costs. And that's really Iran's strategy. And so by doing this, Iran is showing it as leverage and is trying to signal that it's not going to be shy about using that leverage.